Aloha! My name is Mike DeWert. This is ThinkTech, and the name of this segment is For the Benefit of Humankind, because when I was a kid, my science teachers taught me that the purpose of science is to predict and control nature for the benefit of humankind. Today I have a guest who's been at this for a long time. He's a scientist and anthropologist who has dedicated, I guess, the rest of your life more or less to helping kids.
Educating other people.
His name is Ken Harding.
Yeah, hi.
And he's Chief of Youth Outreach for the Rotary Foundation of Metropolitan Honolulu.
Well, yeah, there's we rotate different kinds of service in the Rotary clubs, and I've been a Rotarian for a long time. That's how you and I met, Mike. And we're in the same club that meets. We meet weekly, and we all have different, headlines and titles that we wear. But my current involvement is in the youth service, and we focus in helping to provide, open up support and for education of young people, especially in lower income areas like Kalihi, but not limited to just Kalihi in terms of just our one club. So yeah, I was delighted when you suggested we come and talk story about opportunities in education and our passion. I think both you and I are lifelong learners. I'm an anthropologist only because I gravitated into it. I'm an anthropologist by training, an applied anthropologist, but I'm also a small businessman and owner. My wife and I have a little tutoring service, and that's what we do for a living. And because people used to joke about me, being someone who had a hard time holding down a permanent job. But I'm just really interested in how things tick.
Right, a lot of brilliant people are like that.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I have had many other adjectives applied to me, and that's nice.
The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
That's right, the old Chicago School of Merchandising.
Yeah, but you were telling me that when you were a kid, now I was born the year after Sputnik went up, but you were a kid when Sputnik went up.
Yeah, I was in high school when Sputnik was launched. I was extremely interested in the so-called space race. Eisenhower was president. I was living in Washington, D.C., where I basically grew up. And so I was well aware. My dad was very interested in science as well. And when we were having a lot of problems, and the space race was very intense in the late 1950s. And I distinctly recall when Sputnik went up. I went out in my backyard. It was evening. I was in the 11th grade, and it was a clear evening and a little chilly. I think it was around 7 or 8 o'clock, and I had read and studied about orbits, and it was the most amazing thing, sensational, stunning silence. And it was just me out in the backyard, and I kind of kept scanning the sky, and I saw this one star and realized that's moving. And I just watched in awe.
No sound like an airplane would have back then.
It moved, it was totally silent. And I watched that thing just move methodically across the sky, and I get chicken skin thinking about it now. And that motivated me. I went out the next day or two and bought a used Berlitz book of Russian. Started teaching myself. I was telling one of my sons the other night about Gavarichi Paruski. Do you speak Russian? Is what that means. That's the one phrase. But I was really intent, and started getting everything I could. Went to college starting out in engineering, but because of my other interests, and I figured out that history was as interesting as calculus, and I was doing a little bit better in it, so I kind of switched gears during my college years. But I'm a lifelong eclectic synthesizer, and I love getting information, and you're a great source of, I never have a dull conversation with a couple of people in my life, and you're one of them, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. A question, when you were a kid, did you ever take a stopwatch out in the backyard and look up at that satellite and try to calculate how high it must be?
I didn't quite go that far,
Okay.
but I am constantly measuring things.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, like I drive people nuts with my iPhone when I continually discover new programs on it. I don't go out and buy them, but I go down to Apple Store. Probably not supposed to promote products, but
everybody has an iPhone or something like it.
To me, that you know, that the Apple company, Steve Jobs was a real hero in a lot of ways, just for his independence. I'm not sure how we would have gotten along, but I think I probably would have really liked him because he was such a perfectionist. But he really had the design. I was really into design, and to be able to use the timer. I use the timer all the time, and so I'm constantly surprised at how far off my assumptions are about how far I've gone, how long it takes.
Oh yeah, your perception of time versus objective reality.
And space. Those are the two dimensions that really count. And I had heard that, but I've learned that for the last 50 years or so, more than that, 60 years. I think this was 58, so it was a long time ago in some way. I graduated from high school in 58, graduated from my college in 62, went straight into the Peace Corps. So it was kind of that, I was always kind of interested in new challenges.
Sure.
And was excited. I was one of the original Peace Corps volunteers too.
So when in the Peace Corps, were you teaching kids in Africa or somewhere? Or
no,
is that where you got interested in the kids?
The interest in the kids really came during the Peace Corps and flourished. Because I was in South America, I was in Peru, I was in the barriadas, which are the poor squatter settlements. And I actually, one of my assignments was to teach English, a little bit of English, but it was kind of informal at the University of Ica. And so I had some involvement, but my real work was as a community developer, and I was very ill-defined, but I did not do well in a Spanish classroom. I nearly flunked out of Yale because of my Spanish problems, and I have to process the information slowly and repeatedly. And thanks to the kids who lived in the poorest section of Ica and in Lima, which was up the Pan Am Highway. And those kids really, they wanted to learn a few words of English, and I wanted to learn a few words of Spanish. So we traded, and there was no embarrassment, no ego, and it was very, very beneficial for all parties concerned. And it was a great experience. And then, my wife and I, we have 4 kids now, all grown with kids of their own. But when they were growing up, it was a lot of fun in the Harding household, and we used to kid Kitty, my wife, as being a single mom with 5 kids, because I was the ringleader.
Oh, I see. You're the oldest?
I'm the oldest, but with our own 4 children, I still. We get down and
I see.
We read stories to each other. I finally settled down and started reading stuff I should have read when I was in high school.
So you really didn't get over being a kid.
I never have gotten over being. It's not just my age now. But it's really enjoyable. Learning, you share. My whole philosophy of education is that you share, and for your co-learners, we're coaches of each other. We build on the compassion and the shared mutual excitement of discovery and finding these patterns. That's what math is all about. Patterns, I think. And,
that's why it's so related to music, the pattern of the music, the pattern of the math. I was reading about a Chopin etude that Chopin had written so that you could group the notes in 3s or you could group the notes in 2s, and it should sound exactly the same however you play it.
Isn't that incredible?
But it takes incredible skill by the musician to play it both ways and have it sound the same. The mathematics is just astonishing.
I used to drive some people in my birth family, with my younger brothers would be very upset when I would practice on the organ and the accordion, and you have the scale of fifths, and so I knew those finger movements and could do it, and the organ was great because I could use all four limbs and really get into it.
Okay.
But it would produce some, quote, noise.
Yeah.
Can you turn that darn thing down? You know, I can hear my dad yelling.
You guys had a portable electric organ, or?
Oh no, it wasn't quite that. It wasn't the organ grinder. It was a Hammond home organ.
Okay.
And my mother always was working in, you know, music, and she had a keen sense of exploration, which I only began to appreciate after I was really out of the house and on my own in Peru, and the Peace Corps essentially is when that.
So what were you teaching
started.
in the Peace Corps?
Well, I was working in community development. I was English was one of the things they needed, but and it became very informal. And helping with housing, and you know, people, you build a relationship. But I was really fascinated by the social patterns and by the immigration, migration routes down from the Andes. I've always loved geography. So I cannot tell you what an impact. My real education, you know, I have some nice degrees. In my life, I'm fortunate. I really appreciate having them, and never would have met some people if I hadn't had some involvement. But my real education began in the slum areas of Peru, and the knowing people, communicating, learning, wandering around, wondering what's going on, without realizing, oh, they're not talking about me, they're talking about themselves, you know, the problems. And seeing what abject poverty is really like. And so for the I was one of the original volunteers, and I was speaking all over Connecticut my senior year before I even went into the Peace Corps. And John F. Kennedy, who I met and came to Yale and spoke at our graduation. 3 days later, I was in the Peace Corps. I still carry around his brother-in-law, Sergeant Shriver.
Really, our Sergeant Shriver
personally invited me to come into the Peace Corps.
That's wonderful.
And so
wow, what an experience!
Yeah, you know, you're fortunate. You look back on it later, but you know, you like to pay things back by paying them forward. And one of the ways.
That's a very good way to phrase it. Pay things back by paying them forward.
Yeah, that's. I think they made a movie out of it, but so
I heard the phrase "pay it forward," but I hadn't heard of the juxtaposition of the two phrases.
It's always nice to do things. It's you know, you always get more out of what you give, and that's what I like about Rotary, which. You know, is something that I've been involved with for. I first discovered Rotary in the Peace Corps because I was asked to speak to a Rotary club in Ica. But it was later that after Kitty and I had gotten married, and then I really discovered Rotary on Kauai and where we lived, and because we were involved in the communications. Rotary was important that you meet other people, and I didn't have too much trouble meeting other people, but it really gives you access, and it's both community-based and it's global. So, you know, think local, act global, act global, think local. You know, the inverses work, the palindromes, the opposites, and numbers. 15051.
Palindrome.
Yeah, that's what I do when I run. I think about numbers all the time.
It's funny. I sometimes put myself to sleep thinking about physics problems. It's the weirdest thing.
The sheep of physics, right?
Well, you know, it was like I saw this movie
That's great.
About the Space Cowboys. You know, Clint Eastwood and those guys. Now, was it James Garner and Tommy Lee Jones? And some scientists said, well, you don't have to go all the way to the moon. You only have to get halfway there and let gravity take over. I'm like, that's wrong. That answer's wrong. What is the right answer? So I laid awake one night and calculated the right answer is actually, depending on how you do it, might be as little as 80% of the way there. All you have to do is get 80% of the way to the moon, and if you're going in the right direction, then you'll get captured by the moon's gravity.
But you have to be going in the right direction.
You have to be going in the right direction.
Right.
Direction. So if you're not going in the right direction, you have to get like 90% of the way there.
Be pretty careful about your orbits and which orbital pathways you're looking at. Yeah, satellites too are just really, really interesting subjects.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And we're going to have to come back to that after the break.
Okay.
My name is Mike DeWert. This is ThinkTech for the benefit of humankind, and we'll be back with Ken Harding to talk more about education, Rotary, and satellites after the break.
I'm Hong Jiang, host for Asia in Review on Tuesdays.
And I'm David Day, host for Asian Review on Thursdays. Both of us broadcast our respective shows at 4 p.m.
And my topics tend to deal with questions related to environment, culture, history, and sometimes human rights.
And my shows tend to be on international business, foreign policy, geopolitics, and national security. And you can watch our shows live on the ThinkTech website at thinktechhawaii.com.
And you can also watch us on YouTube or Olalo.
So come join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. I'm David Day.
And on Tuesdays at 4 p.m., I'm Hong Jiang.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha, welcome back. I'm Mike DeWert. This is for the benefit of humankind on ThinkTech. And I'm here today with my guest, Ken Harding, to talk about Rotary's youth outreach, education, Sputnik, anything else that comes up. So
good, great. Well, thank you for asking me.
Yeah, glad you're here.
Mike,
this is fascinating.
Yeah, well, it's always interesting. One of the nice things, you know, Rotary, which means wheel and turning. The history of Rotary organization is very interesting. It started. One guy had an idea in Chicago. He was a young attorney. He was in his 20s. Paul Harris was his name.
Oh, yeah.
And Harris didn't know anybody in Chicago. He came from farmland, I think in Illinois, but it was mostly farmland. This was in 1905 or so. And he met a couple of other people who happened to do different things. And Harris was an attorney, but there were 4 other people, and they began meeting and rotating where they met. They met in their offices in Chicago, and that's where the idea of Rotary came. And they still meet 100 and so many years, 9 years later. All Rotary clubs, now a worldwide organization, very community-based. Meets weekly in a particular place, and everybody has their job classification or their career or professional category. Mine happens to be community education. Yours is when you came into the Rotary Club, you were probably given physics or a consultant,
technology, something like that.
And so they try to look for it's very informal. No 2 Rotary clubs are the same. Here in Hawaii, we have 49 Rotary clubs throughout the islands, and District 5000. When I joined Rotary on Kauai in 1971, I had black hair or dark hair, and my hair was as dark as your hat, and I was 28 or 9 years old, and was astounded at what fun it was. Became president of that club, and have been involved ever since. And it's something that I always get much more out of than I can ever give. And it's one of a couple of things I've done most of my adult life. So it's always interesting. It's a great way to know the community. But I wear this band which says End Polio Now.
Oh yes, that's
Rotary
the big Rotary project.
Doing this. We're all over the world, and there are clubs, and you can go to any club and make up a meeting and meet people instantaneously, get access to some of the most interesting people in the world. And it really doesn't cost much, and what the costs are going to scholarship funds. And either Rotary International or, in our case, you and I are in the same Rotary Club, the Metro Club. It goes to funding Diamonds in the Rough scholarships for kids in primarily in the downtown area, but at Farrington and McKinley and
the less wealthy school districts.
It's this Rotary Scholarship Foundation is aimed at those kids who do not have 4.0 averages. but 2.0 or so, who are recommended by their counselors or teaching staff or principals or peers as being young people who have overcome amazing obstacles and very determined. And so we focus on those kids, and the scholarships are terrific. And it's just what one club has done. But as you know, these kids are really inspiring the way they...
And sometimes it takes a little attention from a mentor to turn a kid around and turn a mediocre kid into somebody who's a star eventually.
And the kids are, this is what happens. They get labeled. We all label everybody else. You want to look at what drives this person. And, so it's deeply inspiring, very motivating to work with them and with their teachers and to develop long-term partnerships. Well, that's some of those skills. You learn multiple ways. On the job. Living different areas, cross-cultural experience. For me, the Peace Corps was the first breakout experience of living in a different culture, and in many ways, it is a different culture when you go from an affluent area in one section of town into another area, and often people don't interact. And that was true in Lima. And I have to tell you, it's true in Honolulu.
There's like you say, the networking is so important here in Hawaii. Perhaps more important than other places, but certainly incredibly important here. And the only way to get things done sometimes is to build long-term relationships across the islands and between social strata. And it sounds like you've done a great job of that, and Rotary is certainly doing that.
Rotary lives by that, and it's really been exciting for us. Last week we got married in 1966, and last week we marked 47 years of when we first came to Hawaii, and during that first year of marriage. And we spent one night in Honolulu and went straight to Kauai.
Wow.
Because I insisted on seeing what I had read about in National Geographic.
In Kauai.
I wanted to see I wanted to see what Waikiki looked like.
Okay.
My wife, who had spent a summer here in 1960, another long story, but we wound up on Kauai, and it rained. And it rained, and
I guess this was March.
We were driving around. It was in March, the 17th, and it was only coincidental. It was
St. Patrick's Day.
But we were up in Honolulu. It was at the old Princeville place, and it was before Princeville was developed. But there was a little hotel where South Pacific had been filmed. And we had seen that movie, and so we drove around a lot. And being an optimist, I figured, wow, this place is really incredible. If the weather is this, if the place is this nice when the weather is this poor, it must be incredible.
And the weather's good.
It was my second trip out to look at things. Maybe a year and a half later, and we were graduate students in California at Stanford. And so came out, and it was the second trip, and said, wow, Kenny boy, this place, you're not smart enough to really keep in mind how beautiful it really, really is. So my lifelong love affair with Hawaii really has been going on a long time.
So you moved to Kauai so you could keep in mind how beautiful the place is.
And we lived there for 17 years. Our 4 kids were, first one was born here because they didn't have an OBGYN on Kauai at that time, and then that came later before the second one was born. So that kid turned 43 last month.
Wow.
So we've seen a lot, we've interacted a lot, we've been really privileged to see so much, and I constantly, am impressed with the culture and how you get things, not just get them done, but how you live as a human being. I'm truly humbled to be able to be a resident in Hawaii.
There's nothing like the aloha spirit. I mean, there's people that still live by that, where you greet each other. When you say aloha, they say aloha back.
And we had an experience this past weekend in Waianae where a Rotary Club is always doing projects, and community service is another avenue of service for Rotary. And so 44 members of the club, and we're a relatively large club, but 44 people, and including, you know, spouses and maybe quarter of the cases. So there were about 20 plus Rotarians. The fellowship was great, but we were working on improving some physical improvements side by side with our partner Y&I Rotary Club, which has been there forever.
Oh, yeah.
And then they have an Interact Club too, and Interact is a high school level Rotary Youth Service clubs that we sponsor. But we were primarily working with the Punana Leo program, which is a charter school, but it's a private charter school, and it's Hawaiian immersion, and it was truly, you know, chicken skin time when the kids were so disciplined. They greeted us Friday afternoon when we came out there, and they had demonstrations. It was all in Hawaiian, and we had an outer circle of visitors, and we had an inner circle of all of the people who were welcoming us, and they went around the circle, moving clockwise and counter, and we were stationary on the outside. Each one, it wasn't just, as someone said this morning, an air kiss. It was really a genuine hug, and it was a cultural experience that was phenomenal. And you have to have those relationships if you're going to, you know, do some things that are lasting in terms of service above self. As you know, as a Rotarian, service above self has been, you know, this nonprofit organization's motto for all of these years, ever since it took off in Chicago.
It's not just business networking, it's things like eradicating polio, or last year we sponsored, the Rotary had the International Peace Forum here with Aung San Suu Kyi as a keynote speaker, and people from all over the world
She's a Nobel
sharing.
Prize winner, or a nominee.
It's amazing. It's amazing what Rotary's doing.
And I made it a point to be sure that we had kids from Farmington as well as from, you know, there's
a whole table of kids from Farmington. I remember you brought.
They were wonderful students. They were so attentive, and you know, been, you know, really happy to be friends with them and their advisor. And you know, my friend Brady Justa works with Farmington, and you know, you have to just kind of, it's like Peace Corps, participant observation. That's how you really learn what's going on, and it takes years. But if you're persistent, you never give up on an idea, and you keep working on it. And each one of these, you know, each youngster, each person, whatever their age, they're not too old to learn, and they will be old if they don't learn. You know,
so you'll be old at a young age if you don't learn.
That's right, and I think we've all met people like that. So I am truly happy to be able to help, you know, direct some of the Rotary resources into lower income areas, and into nooks and crannies, and into areas that are so rich culturally that they have much more to offer than sometimes we can ever give back.
I remember my first experience with poverty. I didn't know it was poverty. I was 5 years old. But my dad was stationed in Libya. This is before Gaddafi, when the Sultan Idris still ruled the country. And we had a bellboy, Muhammad was his name, and he was the guy that took care of the apartment we lived in. We lived off base in the foreign quarter of town. And Mom was always mad at him because he'd steal oranges off the tree in the backyard. Well, then one day Muhammad takes me to his home for lunch. And his home was a shack, leaning against the city wall. And his wife was there making him pancakes, and I think she only had flour and water. I didn't see any eggs or milk go into those pancakes. And there were chickens scratching around in the dirt. And to me as a kid, I didn't realize this was just abject poverty. To me it was an adventure, but thinking about it later on, it's like, here's my mom mad at this guy for stealing oranges off her tree, and he can't even afford to put the eggs from the chickens into his pancakes because they got to be sold for the family to live.
Poverty is really relative, and it's humbling.
Humbling.
And we have lots of attitudes, and a lot of it goes unsaid. We see it here, you know, with regard to the whole homelessness issue and judgments about people. And I think it's when you know people face to face, and you know, okay, they're just as human as I am.
Yes.
And when you find out that there's so much wisdom that didn't come through degrees or through, you know, formal education, but you know, street savvy. That's the sort of thing that happens when you cross out of your own cultural, you know, culture of upbringing.
That's
but
interesting.
you can appreciate that when you get outside it. That's a lesson. I mean, for me, that's the value of the Peace Corps, and that also Rotary helps to. Rotary brings in a lot of people who have backgrounds that, you know, are pretty phenomenal.
Amazing people.
So the Peace Corps is just part of that background.
Okay. Well, like Mark Twain said, never let your schooling interfere with your education.
That's right.
And it sounds like you certainly haven't gotten way more education than schooling.
Mark Twain was one of my heroes, Huckleberry Finn. You know,
that was amazing.
We used to have a lot of fun at Tom Sawyer, and many of my, you know, my experiences in the Peace Corps were based on Tom Sawyer and the wisdom of Tom Sawyer.
So I think with that, we'll take another break.
Okay.
My name is Mike DeWert. This is ThinkTech. The show is for the benefit of humankind. I've been talking to Ken Harding about Rotary, the Peace Corps, never letting schooling interfere with education, and we'll be back.
Hello, I'm Jay Fidel of ThinkTech. On March 27th at the YWCA downtown, Laniakea, we're having a luncheon program, a luncheon panel program we call the Midterm Legislative Report. We're going to present our 2014 Legislative Midterm Update featuring Bob Toyofuku of Hawaii Advocates as our moderator and a panel of leading state finance officials who will tell you about what's going on in the legislature about money this session. It's really important. Senator David Ige, chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, Representative Aaron Ling Johansson, co-vice chair of the House Finance Committee, Representative Sylvia Luke, chair of the House Finance Committee, Calbert Young, State Budget and Finance Director, all the people who are very important, who know about the state fiscal policy, the state finances this session. You know, they say we have a spare $884 million. How much do we really have? The Council of Revenues changed its mind about projections. And how are we going to spend that money or not? What effect will our, you know, current $40 billion of unfunded liabilities have on all of this? And in an election year, what are the real priorities that are going to determine the money bills and the final result of the 2014 legislature as far as you are concerned? We'll cover current fiscal issues, bills of interest of the business community, and we'll look at the provisions, political dynamics, probabilities, price tags of crossover and passage this year. It'll be very interesting to find out what is going to happen here as far as your bills are concerned and as far as state initiatives are concerned. It's an essential program for anybody who wants to know the fiscal state of the state, or if you want to network with the legislators and like-minded attendees who are likewise interested in the subject. Sign up on thinktechhawaii.com. We look forward to seeing you there. Aloha.
Aloha. Welcome back. I'm Mike DeWert. This is ThinkTech. The name of the show is for the benefit of humankind. And I'm talking today with Ken Harding, who's very influential in the Rotary in Honolulu. And we're going to talk about some of the Rotary educational programs next. So
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, again, it's really terrific to be with you,
Mike.
It's
good to be with you.
And we're, for the benefit of our viewers, we are members of the same Rotary Club. That's how we met and found out we have a lot of interests. And Rotary is I think it may be the original, the oldest service organization. It's nonprofit. It was founded in 1905 in Chicago and quickly spread. Came to Hawaii in 1915.
Wow!
When
just 10 years after,
so-called Mother Club, the Honolulu Rotary, was founded. So Rotary has been. It's going to celebrate its 100th anniversary in the islands in another year.
Next year.
And so that's a very big deal. And Rotary has made its mark, both locally. The format is, it's a local organization, networking organization. It also is an international organization, has a terrific scholarship fund, Rotary Foundation. It sponsors, it's always focused on education and scholarship for undergraduate, graduates, and teachers. And there are about 5 different categories over the years as it's grown into this very large and successful, effective nonprofit. It's kind of one of the models. And one of the projects, I have this little orange band that I wear in Polio Now, is all about the mission to help eradicate polio. And when we started in 1975, I think it was, we really helped to sound that clarion call. And most of the listeners and the viewers are probably too young to remember that polio used to really be a scary, scary thing. And if they had things called the iron lung. And,
there's still people living in iron lungs.
And I remember, you know, we lived in Washington, D.C., but my parents were really insistent that we move out of the city because they thought you got it, but they didn't know how you got it. It's a virus, it turns out. The Salk, Dr. Salk in the 50s.
And Sabin.
And Sabin. And so we grew up with the fear of polio. Well, that fear is reality. They're in parts of the world, especially, there are only 3 countries where it's left. In Pakistan and Afghanistan, and some of the political reasons, you know, would help explain why it's so difficult to get the vaccine out there. And Nigeria is another place, but that's no disease has ever been wiped off before from a scientific standpoint. So
except for smallpox.
Except for smallpox. So it's a real challenge. And Bill Gates, whose dad is a Rotarian in Seattle, Bill Gates really kind of upped the ante. And so he set up a matching gift of millions, and Rotary met that. And so that program to end polio now is just reflective of what Rotary's, you know, part of Rotary's work has been on an international scale. Locally, every club has 4, now 5 avenues of service. You know what they are. They are club service, which is sort of administrative stuff, keeping track of whether people paid their dues or not. Then community service, like the project we did in the Waianae Coast this past weekend. Then there's vocational service, which is information about and appreciation for doing your work ethically in your different categories. So we rotate and, you know, give people opportunities to talk about what they do for a living. And every Rotarian has a category, classification. And then we have the community service, which takes all kinds of forms. All of this is run at the club level, but every Rotary club around the world has the same structure. And then the 5th avenue of service is the only one that's relatively new, but it used to be called youth service, and it's become new generations, and then they're still calling it service. But service above self is what it's about. And you asked me to mention, to highlight Rotary's youth service programs. We have scholarships and support for, the first one was Rotaract. This all started in Australia with the Rotaract idea about 50-some years ago. And it's spread worldwide and now is embraced. And here in Hawaii we have Rotaract clubs. They're usually sponsored by colleges. College level, people in their 20s. And Rotary used to have, you know, originally you had to be, you know, a manager or owner of a business. Gradually that Rotary reflects social changes too. Then we've got the Interact, which is high school, very meaningful service clubs. And in Hawaii, we've got a whole network of, I think, something like 20-some clubs, Interact clubs. And then the newest one is Early Act, Early Act is for middle school and elementary school, and our Metro Club is in the process of helping to launch what I call the triple play. We're working and have been working for several years to either revive or revisit or launch programs in downtown Honolulu with specific schools or a combination of schools, public and private. The key thing is getting a teacher on the site and a Rotarian who are willing to really invest, time for 1 or 2 meetings a month, and but our club is very, very supportive. The district is really supportive of program. Rotary, the name Rotary will open doors for scholarships. And that works, and it's like working at McDonald's.
So in the early act, you get the kids doing service programs?
They're all service. They're looking for service projects.
So the kids do, what kind of things might the kids do in an early act?
They may do cleanups, paint-ups, painting, beautification programs, painting, stripping on school sidewalks. It's up to the members to decide what are we going to do. And
the
it's
kids
all
get some
leadership training.
And
then sometimes if you get a chance to work side by side, how do you really learn about service? What is service learning? That's emerged as a serious academic field. But service learning is what groups like Rotary and Lions and Santa, we're all engaged in trying to serve the community, and you serve it one way or another, and you serve it through what the Peace Corps, and then in anthropology, participant observation. You cannot just be an armchair anthropologist sitting in the back, saying, that has happened to the detriment of everybody. But if you need to really learn the language, you need to engage, you need to be in the field, and it doesn't come easily, and it takes a huge amount of effort and determination. But it pays off in ways that are intangible, and you can't put a dollar sign on it.
As an anthropologist, you must have observed, and I always found this interesting, that if you sincerely want to go out there and help people, you've got to get their trust to help them.
That's right.
And then you've got to, when I get the trust, you've got to be open enough that you're actually risking you being changed. And there's a lot of people don't want to do that. I don't want to go there.
Being a change agent, which we all thought we were maybe set to do in the Peace Corps ideas, the early concepts of the Peace Corps. But your change agent, it's a transforming experience. It's more transformative for the individual change agent than it is for people you're trying to help. You may come down with an idea of, okay, this is what I want to do. But if you're really wise and you quickly, learn by stubbing your toe and often enough, is that, let people decide themselves what they want to do. And that became the hallmark of community development. It's people deciding for themselves, and you're helping to empower them. You're doing it in multiple ways, but you better figure out that it's their project, because if you don't have ownership of the project, your project is just going to be a monument to good intentions, maybe. And then sometimes your projects can be really misunderstood, misinterpreted, and detrimental even. So you never, I learned in Peru, that I began my lessons in unintended consequences, learning about that. And so you can't just march in with your set of values, to take over. And that's why, partly why it's really humbling. No individual from the outside has all the answers.
And,
amazing. And you have to learn. It's a learning process, and often enough, almost always there are reasons why things are the way they are, why they've happened, and it's to your detriment as somebody that might want to change. If you don't think about the community, if you don't think about the individual aspects of this, what's a social ID? I mean, things that really are psychologically important, even philosophically of vital importance. So it's a lifelong, humbling experience to be engaged in other cultures.
I was like reading about, well, actually I was watching on TV a segment on a Rotary project in Seattle, What they had done is they had heard that in the third world, people use wood-burning stoves for cooking, and the soot causes health problems, and the stoves are inefficient, so they're using a lot of wood, which is causing deforestation. And so they went and researched the best wood stove designs. And they came up with some that were really good, that would like burn half the wood, cause 1/10 the pollution. And they went and tried to sell them and get them used in the third world. They found they would sit on the shelf and collect dust. Because, so what they did was they started partnering with local companies that understood the market, because the way people in Mexico use a stove to make tortillas is, say, very different from the way somebody in India would use a wood stove, and the way somebody in another country would use a wood stove. And so they found they had to have a local partner and had to have a rapport with the local people, and then they had to make sure that it cost them something to buy the stove, because then they would value it. But there's one simple thing. You think, well, gee, we should be getting them something that doesn't use stove. You know, electricity, electrify their house. Well, no, the little thing you can do right now, today, greatly improves their lives because they're not breathing soot anymore. But you had to work with the way to do it locally in order to be effective.
And you're really working on a very fast-changing platform because of population changes, the incredible shifts that are occurring. We're all amazed at things like the internet and YouTube, but it's continual and it's accelerating. And those changes, like 50 years ago in Peru, it was remarkable that people up in the Andes were listening to transistor radios. Well, no more remarkable than somebody, next door using a computer. All the high tech in this particular forum.
And now you got your iPhone, and in fact, somebody in the middle of a Peru party has an iPhone now too,
and millions of others. You think about the impact of how. We used to hoard education. Now it's the sharing, a basic idea of sharing of information, and that's really at the heart of empowerment. And you don't need to have things delivered to you. You can take the initiative, but the initiative is defined in multiple ways. So it takes time and it's transformative. And I think changing lives includes the lives of the change agents, because it's presumptuous to be a change agent.
Oh, let me come save you.
Exactly. It's it's a humbling experience. It's got to be based on the keenest kind of respect for others, and so I like the idea of helping others, but helping others help themselves, but helping us all be better. Enjoy a better quality of life. And that's a sharing process. And that's what I love about engagement through Rotary. It's very it's really a neat way to spend some time, quality way.
And this education emphasis is incredibly important. I mean, think about the way, because we talk about all over the world how cultures are different, and we talk about how change is going to come and help people. And one of the things that would do the most to change the world would be the education of women, which isn't being done enough, because educated women could provide better for their kids. They have fewer kids, which means that each kid gets more resources, and that could change the world even faster more than almost anything else we can imagine. So is Rotary starting to look into?
Well, Rotary itself, its history reflects a lot of those changes. Like most organizations, were founded in this part of the world and on the mainland, especially. It was a very different world socially. White male dominant. And women didn't even get the right to vote until 1920 in the United States of America, the bastion of democracy. I personally, as the father of a very active and wonderful daughter, and first daughter in first female in 6th generation born, in my particular line, I had to learn new pronouns when Sarah was born. But the fact is that women have not had access to education and to opportunity. a civil rights issue.
Yes.
It's one that, you don't have to have lived very long to have seen the changes, the massive changes. And any of us who, experienced the civil rights movement, I had an incredible opportunity to meet Dr. King when I was in college. And now to see the monument in Washington, which I visited,
it's inspiring.
Around the other monuments, it's really, really incredible. But these journeys are, not yes and no, analog, this is it. It's digital era. And things ebb and flow, and there are tides. And this whole theory that you were referring to a few minutes ago about the cosmic expansion, the patterns. And the patterns, ebb and flow, and they're waves. It's all about wave theory. That was Einstein's genius, right? The waves, understanding how waves work. Well, people don't have to have gone to Stanford or Notre Dame to appreciate waves. People in cultures that depend on wave action for food, like in Micronesia and in other islands in the Pacific, island societies, they too know the waves better than anybody. They had to go to, for the Hokulea, they had to find somebody from Micronesia, a genius in his own right, who now the Hokulea has really changed the history of Hawaii. It's brought back an appreciation. It's empowered. Knowledge can empower you, but it also is nothing more humbling than you as a scientist know that that picture of the Earthscape coming from the 1960s from the moon, and people walking on the
looking
moon,
back at the Earth,
and looking back and see the Earth rise, and I mean,
inspiring.
You realize what a tiny, tiny dot,
unique
blue
world
dot in the sky this is, like this silent thing, but. That was just a satellite, what, 20,000 feet up, 20,000 miles up, whatever it was. Not
the
miles.
moons, and yet we...
it's perspective.
We humans have a small planet, and it's small enough that we can destroy it, and we got to work together to preserve it.
I feel that way.
And to preserve it for ourselves and our grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
And to try to understand, okay, where are we coming from, and what's out there? The excitement. And so why don't we have more women who are involved in, in physics, for example?
Well, we're working on it. Unfortunately, we have to talk about that another time because we've run out of our 50 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
It's just like being in the psychologist's office. It's a 50-minute hour. So my name is Mike DeWert. This is ThinkTech for the benefit of humankind. We've been talking to Ken Harding, anthropologist and a Rotarian and a master of many trades. And next week I'll have a different guest. And until then, aloha.